Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Covenant Calendar. We're going to look at a very interesting topic today. The unleavened bread consumption schedule. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Is there a consumption schedule for eating unleavened bread? Well, the question is it 7 days or is it 8 days? What have you been taught? How does the sunset day start intensify this challenge? Does Torah reveal a schedule for unleavened bread consumption? And we're going to be examining Exodus 12:18. And most of the verses you see are going to be from the scriptures unless otherwise noted. Would you agree tradition is the enemy of truth? Exodus 12:18 effectively reveals the chasm between tradition and truth. In the first, on the 14th day of the month, in the evening, that would be Abib 14 and Passover, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. That's going to be our verse of focus for this study today. An appearance of conflict with Exodus 12:18. Some questions here regarding the conflict for the following scriptures. Number one, is the command to eat unleavened bread for 7 days or 8 days? And what is the festival content for Exodus 12:18? Is it Passover? Is it unleavened bread festival? Or is it both? Number three, what is the cause of this conflict? Is it the idea of a sunset day? Or is it the idea of a day commencing at dawn? What causes this? We're going to look at these verses here. A, going to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. B, the first day and the seventh day are holy convocations. And C, count the days for eating unleavened bread. Well, Exodus 12:15 to 16 tells us that there's eating unleavened bread from the 15th to the 21st. Count those days. Then we're going to look at Exodus 13:6 to 7, the unleavened bread festival for 7 days. Eat unleavened bread for 7 days. The count is given. 7 days. Quite clear. Leviticus 23:5 to 8. Passover the 14th day. The 15th day is the first unleavened bread convocation, and the 21st day is the second unleavened bread convocation. And you are to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Count the numbers: 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. 7 days. Pretty simple, isn't it? Passover sacrifice is the 14th day at even. Unleavened bread that night until the 21st day of the month at evening. Well, Exodus 12, verse 18 tells us to count the days for eating unleavened bread. 14th to the 21st. Well, that's 7 days, isn't it? You have to eat unleavened bread on the 14th also. So you need to start your count on the 14th. Count the days. Is there 8 of them there? The summary for the count for eating unleavened bread, Exodus 12:15 to 16, 7 days. Exodus 13:16 to 7, verses 6 to 7, 7 days. Leviticus 23:5 to 8, 7 days. And how about this one? Exodus 12, verse 18. There's an 8-day count. Is this a contradiction? Is this a problem? Does it conflict? Or does Scripture explain itself very clearly? There's a time to eat and a time to praise, according to Exodus 12:18. Yahuwah has determined very specific times for observing his Moedim and consumption of unleavened bread. Now the question, do man's traditions align with his set-apart instructions? Have you considered the idea that there may be more to the full Passover festival? More than just eating unleavened bread for 7 cycles, as most have been taught for many years? Is there a possibility that many have been missing something big, by following long-time traditions? I was in that tradition once. Was I missing something? Massive comes to my mind. I was missing something huge. If on the final atonement day you are accused of removing one worship cycle or Torah command, or preventing Yahuwah from receiving obedience for one or more statute requirements, what will your answer be? Will you have an answer? Or will you only stand like a deer in the headlights, eyes wide open and nothing able to come out of your mouth? Do you know what the scriptures declare about Yahuwah's unleavened bread consumption schedule? If somebody were to ask you that today, what would your answer be? Let's start with definitions for season and cycle. And yes, this is definitely for the new people. Hopefully it explains the studies so you can follow them a little bit easier. This study tries to refrain from using the word day that has been translated from the original Hebrew word yom. The word day has lost a massive amount of definitive correctness through ambiguous definitions. Day can indicate 12 or 24 hours, day or night, or both. And it does bring confusion quite often. That's why, in this study, light season is generally used for the 12-hour day. For the 24-hour day in this study, and this is as much as possible, preference will be given to the word cycle in place of the word day. And when quoting scripture or citing the Shabbat day, you will see it then. Otherwise, cycle is the word of choice. But when we quote the scripture, I do like to leave the word day in there, just, I guess, technically to be more accurate with what is written in the scripture. So understanding the important definitions. The 24-hour cycle is further defined to pinpoint 2 seasons. Number 1, cycle is 24 hours containing the 2 seasons. The first portion is the light, H216, or, and the second portion is night, H3915, Leil. And number 2, another part of the 24-hour season is H6256, it is the 12 segments of time, whether it is the light season or the night season, including the twilights of Erev evening and Boker morning. These twilights are very important to be included. Why? Because those twilights are named part of the light season. Jeremiah 33:20-26 uses the terms day season and night season. Excuse me, I got not a good throat, so excuse my clearing my throat once in a while. I hope you can deal with that. Jeremiah's definitions for season. Jeremiah 33, verse 20, 25, and 26. Thus saith Yahuwah, if you can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, that there should not be day and night in their season, day and night in their season. They have a specific season for each one. Verse 25, thus saith Yahuwah, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Yaakov and David, my servant. Does this sound pretty serious? If he casts away the seed of Yaakov and David, who are we? Better question, where are we? And another question, would we even be present? Would we survive? No. So this thought comes pretty serious. It is a serious covenant. Let's have another look. Can assigned leadership be qualified as a season? Which entity, light or night, is assigned to, as in covenanted to, the leadership role, as in a specified season for establishing a 24-hour cycle? Can you answer this accurately from Genesis 1? Which one leads out? Is it the light or the night? And they are established by covenant from Yahuwah. So what if the correct Kadosh sequence is opposite? But let's have a look. There, that yellow wedge that comes in, let's put that as the dawn. Then we have the light season, and you see the arrow, that's the rotation. This is what we understand from Genesis 1. The light season leads out. Then the evening twilight, the Erev mixture comes in after sunset. Then we have the the night season that occurs and brings us back to dawn. So here, the light season is first and the night season is second. Could that be a covenant? Could that be what he's referencing to as in a covenanted season? What if it's opposite? What if the correct Kadosh seasonal leading sequence is opposite? Will this arrangement duplicate exactly as it is written in Genesis 1? Notice the question marks. Or was this substitute adopted for authority as documented in the Hasmonean era of the Second Temple alongside other combined abominations? I hope you read that sentence carefully. That is one loaded question. I'm going to read it again. Will this arrangement duplicate exactly as it is written in Genesis 1? Or was this substitute adopted for authority as documented in the Hasmonean era of the Second Temple alongside other combined abominations? This is the opposite arrangement, and we're going to have a look at it. Was the intention to facilitate the system of determining time, the Moedim, by the moon? Notice the small m for Moedim. These Moedim by the moon are not from Yahuwah. Consequently, there is no capital M for the Moedim. So let's look at this opposite. Here we see the wedge, the orange and gray wedge come in first. That represents the sunset and the mixture, the twilight mixture, Erev. We're told with sunset theory that's first. That leads out the day. And that comes with the night season. The night starts your day. Do you start your day, your Shabbat, in darkness? You're children of the light, you are not of darkness. How does that work out with this idea, with the night season leading out first? Well, we bring in the dawn after the night season. Is that what Genesis 1 says? And then the light season follows second? Really? We need to question this because the night season and the light season are covenanted by Yahuwah for a leadership role. Which one is first? Let's examine Exodus 12:18 for a clue. It will tell us if we are paying attention. Covenant of the light season and covenant of the night season. So we're going to look at some definitions here. First, in usage, the Erev evening review. Erev. It's the mixture after sunset. To mix, mingle, be mingled. A mixture, mixed multitude, rabble of flies or insects. the mixers, mixed ones, light and spirit mixed together. The heavens or celestial fluid consists of this mixture to be darkened, duskily obscured. Now here's a big one. Ben ha-arbeim, between the evenings, or more literally, between the mixtures at sunset, when the cool dark or air mixes with night. When the cool dark air mixes or night air mixes with it. Now, this is from a Hebrew lexicon from John Parkhurst in 1762. And I find this lexicon extremely, extremely good. But I want you to note this. Ben ha-arbeim, between the evenings, or more literally, between the mixtures. Mixtures is an action word. It's a verb. It's the action of before sunrise. It's the action of light overtaking the darkness. And after sunset, it's the action of darkness overtaking the light. So we're going to continue here. How about this one? Arab. It is second in usage. It's not used quite as much in the scripture. All definitions for Arab and Arab are description words. Boker, that's a noun, identifies a general portion of the light season, a noun that includes the dawn twilight. And when it identifies by the dawn twilight, it is the word Arab, H6148. Primitive root is H6150. And this is applied to the morning, or boker. Boker, describing the mixing, that's the action, the verb of light and darkness occurring in the sky at that particular time. Arab is early. When Moshe was commanded to go meet Pharaoh on the banks of the Nile, it was in the Arab. It was the mixture of light overtaking the darkness before sunrise. It was early. Arab, that's dawn. One focus of this study. What time of the 24-hour cycle is it in this picture? Can anybody tell? Is it morning twilight, the mixture of light and darkness? Or could it be the evening twilight, again, mixture of light and darkness? How about number 3? Is it the light season of the cycle with sunlight? Do you see any sunlight there, any direct sunlight? The following graphic illustrates Yahuwah's perfect design of each cycle as given in Genesis 1. This will assist in understanding the study on the days and cycles of consumption for unleavened bread. Please be sure you understand this graphic before moving on. The outline of light and darkness, and this is according to Genesis 1. Boker, dawn's first light. Now, the interesting thing about this word boker is when you look at the definitions, it has the definition of an ox pulling a plow. You say, Tim, what does an ox having a plow with behind it? What does that have to do with morning? Well, it's the action of the plow. What does the plow do? It splits, divides, and distinguishes. That's why there's the word boker at dawn. What does dawn do? It splits, it divides, and it distinguishes the previous 24 hours from the future. There's a division there. That's specifically why this word is used for dawn. Okay, so boker is dawn's first light. Then we see the morning action description, the Arab. That's the twilight mixture of light overtaking the darkness. This is the light before sunrise. This is when your rooster starts crowing and letting people know, hey, it's time to get up. Twilight. Then we have sunrise. Of course, that's direct sunlight. There's your direct sunlight rays. And then we come to sunset. Between the sunrise and the sunset is the direct sunlight rays, and there's no possibility of darkness overtaking the light unless there's divine intervention. And we saw that when Yahusha was hanging on the tree, when it became dark from the 6th hour to the 9th hour. But that was divine intervention. That does not happen on earth today. After the sunset, we see the evening, the Erev twilight mixture. This is when the darkness overtakes the light because the direct rays of sun are gone and the sun has moved out of its position, out of its locale to a different location, and the darkness is able to overtake the light. That's your evening mixture. Then we bring in the darkness, complete darkness, that's Leil, and arrives Boker. Again, the ox pulling the plow at dawn. Again, that plow brings a new cycle. That's why the word Boker. It splits, divides, and distinguishes. So there's going to be a focus coming up on the charts. Will it be dawn or will it be sunset? To correctly calculate the cycles unleavened bread is to be eaten on, the correct day start must be known first. The primary question for this study about unleavened bread is to find the divine guidelines for when and how long unleavened bread is to be eaten. Number one, will there be a foundation for the format of Yahuwah's dawn design? And two, will we see any support for the sunset theory system of reckoning time? What happens to the statutes when the sunset theory is used for the day count of eating unleavened bread at the Passover festival? Will sunset theory cause an infraction, or will it support the statutes? All the facts will be examined so future decisions can be made according to Torah guidelines and not traditions. Fact, the blood ratified covenant calendar documented between Genesis 1:1 to Exodus 24:11 proves Yahuwah's day start begins with Boker, or morning. The study will be laid out as part 1 and part 2. To count the days of unleavened bread that it's eaten during the festival of unleavened bread and the full Passover festival, according to the dawn day start. Part 3, this is where it gets kind of interesting. Well, I think part 1 and 2 pretty interesting too, because that's Yahuwah's truth. But it's good to compare to part 3. Why? Because we're going to look at sunset theory with the closest and most searching scrutiny from the Torah statute commands to find if there is any alignment, any whatsoever. Part 1, the Torah count for unleavened bread. Is it 7 or 8 days? We have to establish this first. This section will concentrate on the message of eating unleavened bread during only the festival of unleavened bread. An examination will be made of A, when is the time frame for the eating of unleavened bread? B, where are the designated dates for the eating of unleavened bread during only the festival of unleavened bread? Keep in mind, many have accepted traditions and other popular timings for the eating of unleavened bread. But many more believe these practices are Torah-based. Is it possible that these beliefs do not exist in Torah? Next, texts from Exodus 12 and 13 about eating unleavened bread will begin this study. I've been asking too many questions so far. Let's get some evidences. A Torah focus on festival of unleavened bread. Exodus 12:15. 7 days ye shall eat unleavened bread, and from the first day ye shall utterly remove leaven from your houses. Whoever shall eat leaven, that soul shall utterly be destroyed from Israel from the first day unto the 7th day. Exodus 13, verse 6. 6 days ye shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh is a feast to Yahuwah. Exodus 13, verse 7. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Nothing leavened shall be seen with thee, neither shalt thou have leaven in all thy borders. 7 days. Two separate commands and two substances. Leviticus 23:6. On the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread to Yahuwah. Question here. Will the festival of unleavened bread commence with the dawn day start? Or is that sunset to sunset? We're going to have a look here at Yahuwah's 24 hours of Passover from Mitzrayim, or Egypt, if you will. On the left, we see here the dawn with the pink bar here. That's where the dawn begins. Again, the Boker Arab twilight mixture. You see the blue box. There's black over here, blue in the middle, a little yellow mark up there. That represents a mixture, twilight mixture. Then comes the sunrise. Then we have Abib 14 light season and the sunset. The Erev twilight mixture arrives after the sun has set. Exodus 12:6. And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it when? Between the mixings, or between the evenings. The evenings are actually a mixing, Erev. And it is still Abib 14 night season, according to Torah. Exodus 12, verse 8. And they shall eat the flesh on that night, the 14th, because it's still Passover, and roasted in fire with unleavened bread, and with bitter they shall eat it. Note here, Exodus 12 Passover sacrifice between the mixings was during the night season as detailed in previous teachings. Again, Abib 14, they shall eat the flesh on that night. Make no mistake. Using the last graphic for dawn day start, examine the festival of unleavened bread from the 15th to the 21st and see how many cycles of eating unleavened bread are accomplished according to Exodus and Leviticus. On the first month, on the 15th day, begin eating unleavened bread. So here we see there's the 15th. The yellow is the light season. The black is the night season. That's a complete 24-hour cycle. So this is the 15th day of unleavened, or the 15th day of the month. It's the first day of unleavened bread. Count the days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are as many times as you eat unleavened bread in the feast of unleavened bread. Amounts to 7 right there. Quite simple. For 7 days, you eat unleavened bread until the evening mixture of darkness overtaking light. The scriptures reveal a 7-cycle schedule for consuming unleavened bread during the festival of unleavened bread. This schedule is easily achieved when abiding by Yahuwah's dawn start of the day format from creation. Yahuwah's covenant count for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, when and how long? Begin at dawn on the 15th to the evening of the 21st. Count the days. There's 7 cycles for eating unleavened bread. Make no mistake about it. 7 cycles. So we're going to part 2, Passover festival count for unleavened bread. This section will concentrate on the message of eating unleavened bread during the full Passover spring festival. Will it be different? The same examination will be made for A, when is the time frame for the eating of unleavened bread? And B, Where are the designated dates for the eating of unleavened bread for the Passover Spring Festival? Again, keep in mind that there are many accepted traditions and other popular timings for the eating of unleavened bread for Passover. Many believe these practices are Torah-based. The question again is, do these beliefs exist in Torah? Many people like to state their belief, but can they back it up? Can they give Torah-based scriptures for their beliefs, or are they statements only? Next, the texts from Leviticus 23, 5-6 about eating unleavened bread for the Passover festival begins part 2. Remember, Exodus 12, verse 15, chapter 13, verses 6-7, and Leviticus 23, verses 6 on, all mention unleavened bread was to be eaten for 7 cycles. There was no reference there of any cycles for eating unleavened bread. However, new information will move into an interesting situation. Further in Exodus 12, it appears as if there is a totally different number given. Let's check further in Leviticus. Leviticus 23:5. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings, is Yahuwah's Passover, the 14th. Leviticus 23:6. And on the 15th day of this month is the feast of unleavened bread to Yahuwah. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. We have 2 dates. The 14th is for the Passover, and the 15th starts the unleavened bread feast. Have you ever noticed the verses addresses 2 different festivals with 2 separate feast dates? The 14th and the 15th. 2 different festivals. So how come that we say the Passover and we mean the Feast of Unleavened Bread in conjunction with it? Is that viable? Does it cause any confusion if we don't divide and separate things accurately with our count? Exodus 12, verse 16. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation. And in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done by you. Question: what feast is verse 16 talking about? Is it Passover or unleavened bread festival? The second question: is the Passover festival a holy convocation? There is no scriptural support claiming Passover as a holy convocation or a Shabbat of any kind. However, in Leviticus 23, 7-8, there is information affirming that indeed the festival of unleavened bread has 2 holy convocations. Convocations? Yeah, that's H 4744 Makra. And these holy convocations are on 24-hour cycles at the beginning and ending of the festival. Therefore, Exodus 12:16 cannot be referring to the Passover festival night season for the first day of consuming unleavened bread. It is referencing only the first convocation of the festival of unleavened bread for its own commencement point of unleavened bread consumption. This serious point is going to become extremely important very quickly. So what about Leviticus 23:6 and Exodus 12:18? Well, let's read Leviticus. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahuwah. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. There's your 7 cycles of the week. What about Exodus 12:18? In the first month, on the 14th day, it doesn't say after the 14th day. It says, On the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. Well, here there's a count of 8 cycles of eating unleavened bread. So some thoughts to ponder here. The scripture provides the distinction between the 2 different orders to consume unleavened bread during the festival of unleavened bread and the feast of Passover. Number 2, will the separating distinction of unleavened bread consumption, will that allow for the individual feast dates of Passover and unleavened bread? And will that separation effect collectively indicate a total of more than 7 cycles for consuming unleavened bread, according to Exodus 12, verse 18? Something of importance here. Can point number 2 indicate there are really 8 cycles for eating unleavened bread, as the count indicated in Exodus 12:18? Will this scripture also enable us to fulfill all required statutes for eating unleavened bread during the 2 festivals? Another question, will this scripture indicate one or the other is incorrect, either dawn start of the day or the sunset start of the day? What is the effect that's going to come out of this scripture? Exodus 12:18. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. Will sunset theory support this verse? How many cycles are there, counting from the 14th cycle to the 21st? Where else do we read of eating unleavened bread on the 14th of the month? The first scriptural instruction for eating unleavened bread is found in Exodus 12:8, 10 verses before Exodus 12:18. Verse 8 is ultra specific. Verse 8, and they shall eat the flesh in this night, roast with fire, and they shall eat unleavened bread with bitter. The fact, unleavened bread was to be eaten that night, not the next night. It was to be that night. The Passover meal is always eaten at night, not in the light season, but after the sun had set and the darkness had begun. At night is when it was to be eaten. A question again, for the timing context up to this point in Exodus 12, what single cycle of the month has been indicated? Well, let's read it one more time. Repetition is great for learning. Exodus 12:6. And it shall be kept by you till the 14th of this month, and all the multitude of the congregation of the children of Israel shall kill it toward evening. Between the evenings is Ben Ha-Arbaim is the Hebrew words, and it's between the mixings. And verse 8 again, Exodus 12, verse 8, and they shall eat the flesh when? In this night, the 14th, roasted with fire, and they shall eat unleavened bread with bitter. Does the traditional sunset day start agree with Torah? We shall see. Again, we're having a look here, just review to get this sequence in our head so we understand and can recognize the counterfeit. Who is 24 hours of Passover in Egypt? Again, there's the Boker or the Arab twilight mixture at the dawn. Then comes in the sunrise. Then we have the direct sunlight of Abib 14 light season, and that follows up with the sunset. Then along comes the evening Erev, or the twilight mixture after the sun has set. And the verse again, and you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it Ben Ha-Arbaim, or between the mixings. on Abib 14 night season. Exodus 12:8. And they shall eat the flesh when? On that night, roasted in fire, with unleavened bread, and with bitter they shall eat it. Again, we need to remember this is the night of the 14th, the Passover night. With the previous review of the Passover day start chart, let's next examine the full Passover festival to see how many cycles there are for eating unleavened bread, as it is written in Exodus 12:18. Here's the verse, Exodus 12:18. Check it out. Passover eaten on that night. That's what we read. Roasted in fire with unleavened bread. There's your command to begin your unleavened bread consumption with unleavened bread. So on the left, we see here cycle number 1, and it's Abib 14, eating unleavened bread on that night. Then we bring in the unleavened bread festival. The 15th day is the first, and it's the first of the 7 days. So you add up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, ends on the 21st, and you add that together, you have 8 days of eating unleavened bread. Interesting. That works out with Exodus 12, verse 8. Huh. If we pay attention to the words of the scripture, we get alignment. Exodus 12:18, the 21st day of the month. When? In the evening. Full scriptural alignment. The scriptures do reveal an 8-cycle schedule for consuming unleavened bread during the Passover and unleavened bread festivals. This schedule is easily achieved when abiding by Yahuwah's dawn day start format. From where? Genesis 1:1. From creation. That's the pattern that was seeded on this earth. It was established with the voice of Yahuwah. Yahuwah's covenant count for the full Passover festival. When and how long? Well, you begin at evening, the Erev mixture, on the 14th to the evening of the 21st. Count them out, 14 to 21. Yes, we must count the 14th because we were commanded to eat unleavened bread with the Passover meal. So when you count the 14th to the 21st, you have 8 cycles of eating unleavened bread. Exactly what Exodus 12:18 requests. I should say, what it commands. It wasn't a request. Part 3. Now it's going to be fun. Sunset theory count for unleavened bread. This section will challenge the message of consuming unleavened bread for 8 days to the full Passover festival. The same examination for sunset theory will be made between, number 1, when is the time frame for the eating of unleavened bread? Number 2, where are the designated dates for the eating of unleavened bread according to sunset theory day start? Now, there are many different scenarios for the false time of eating the Passover meal. Only 2 very popular options are under scrutiny in this study. Number 1, the sunset theory option number 1, to eat the lamb with unleavened bread on the night of the 14th. That would be right after the sunset of the 13th. The second option is the sunset theory option number 2, and that is to eat the lamb with unleavened bread on the night of the 15th. Night of the 15th, right after the sunset of the 14th. Note, the charts will demonstrate what happens with the lamb. But remember, the unleavened bread is connected to the lamb, both being eaten together, or it doesn't count. It doesn't qualify for the correct meal. Those accustomed to partaking of unleavened bread for the Passover meal, according to the sunset to sunset standards, will observe either one of 2 traditions. Either on sunsets Abib 14, and that would be right after the sunset on the 13th, or they will do it on sunset's Abib 15th, right after sunset on the 14th. Note, the confusion that follows will verify that such Torah commands cannot be found, for they do not exist as statutes. At this time, we will concentrate on the message of only the 8 days for eating unleavened bread during the full Passover festival. And questions, I'm full of questions, I know that. Questions, exactly. Where and what date will sunset theory place the Torah command for the commencement of eating unleavened bread for the Passover festival? Will all 8 days be accounted for? Oh, I better read that one again. Will all 8 days be accounted for? What if I said that's the reason for this study? Would that bring your attention to that question? Number 3, why are many taught to observe Passover in the convocation night season of Abib 15 against what the scripture writes, and counting that time as part of the unleavened bread festival? Is there a crossover day or date or festival from Passover to unleavened bread? Are they one and the same? Can you cross them over? Can you smooth one into the other? Is 14 somehow the 15th? Think about that. Number 4, and where can we find a scripture instructing this message, that you can cross the 14th into the 15th? Is that written in scripture anywhere? Will any sunset theory options be able to fulfill a Torah command for when to begin eating unleavened bread and for how long? Again, question is sunset theory. For this next section, remember the dawn day timing based on the very words of creation as recorded in Genesis 1. We need to remember this in our heads. Next, we will consider the tradition most have been taught, me included, for many years, and determine if the traditional system will also allow complete fulfillment for the full Passover festival statutes as written in Torah, Exodus 12. The traditional system, known as sunset theory, starts the cycles of the week with the sunset moment before the night season. Sunset has an inherent problem with identifying the correct time of Erev, the evening mixture. The Hebrew word for evening is often deficiently translated as the sunset. The base definition of Erev and its root word is mixture, mixing, and to be mixed, with zero application to sunset. Zero, as in none. It's a mixture. It has no description of the sun going down. When the word Erev is applied to time, it designates the segment of time of the 24-hour cycle when the, note it, indirect sunlight begins mixing with the darkness in the evening twilight. Why the emphasis on indirect? Well, there is teachings that declare that there is a rev happening in the middle of the afternoon. So let me ask you, have you ever seen darkness mix with the light in the middle of the afternoon when the sun is in the sky? It's another thing we need to question. Questions, questions, questions. We can't stop with these important things. In the morning twilight, the mixture of darkness decreases with the light until full direct rays of light are exposed. In the evening twilight, the direct sunlight is gone after the sunset, and the darkness assumes dominant rule. Facts about sunlight. The only time when indirect sunlight can be seen in a 24-hour cycle is either, number 1, just before sunrise or just after sunset. And without divine intervention, The mixing of light and darkness cannot occur while the sun is visible in the blue sky. And as mentioned earlier, when Yahushua was hanging on the tree from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, it did go dark. But that was divine intervention. That was not natural circumstances. Considering this understanding that the mixture can only occur when there's indirect sunlight, the Erev evening mixture cannot occur when the sun is visible. Let's look at a graphic to be sure we understand this fully before we continue with our studies in the scriptures. Here comes the graphic. Focus on the light structure. I need to get rid of these pictures. Focus on the light structure as found in creation's cycle number 2 and forward. So here we have the night season, and Boker, which is dawn's first light, comes along because this is sunset to sunset. And then after the dawn, we have morning, a Rav twilight mixture with the indirect light. Then comes sunrise and the light season. Then we have the sunset. There's direct sunlight in between the sunrise and the sunset. And then we have the evening Erev twilight mixture. It is the indirect light. So if we look on the left, here's the night season, twilight, direct sunlight right here, another twilight mixture after the sunset, and the night season. This is the only point in time in the 24-hour period where there's direct sunlight. So the focus here is, it is dawn that starts Yahuwah's cycle, and there's ample proof of this. This is where the eyelashes of dawn are seen, according to Job 3, verse 9, the eyelashes of dawn. Very interesting description because that's exactly what it looks like. Sunset tradition is over here. They declare that the sunset starts the day. They declare that this is where the ox pulls the plow. Well, maybe they don't declare that exactly, but they declare this is where the division of the 24-hour cycle is. What about this tradition? Interestingly, it is documented very, very strongly by a man who is very serious about his Judaism religion. And he's very, very proud to document in history that this sunset tradition was adopted into the Second Temple era around 450 BC. So if this documentation is correct, which this is exactly what is shown in Scripture, what came before the sunset? Was it the dawn, start of the day established at creation? Because here they declare that this sunset tradition around 450 BC changed the cycles, and this was taught by the Pharisees. That would mean that the sunset to sunset tradition existed when Yahushua was on this earth. That's what he had to deal with. Is sunset theory directly linked to the lunar-based worship? So if you were giving your allegiance to the moon, and the moon come up after sunset, wouldn't it be natural just to link the two together? To start your day in darkness? Why are we looking so intently at the twilight mixtures of the cycle? Because it is the sunset ushering in the evening twilight that is going to indicate to us, Yahuwah's true word. Is it any reasonable understanding that Yahushua makes very, very clear the word Erev is understood and documented in Genesis 1:1-5? The word Erev, the mixture, is one of the foundations of understanding Yahuwah's blood. My tongue is getting mixed up. The Erev mixture is one of the foundational understandings for Yahusha's blood ratified covenant calendar. It is foundational. It is as important as oxygen. Question: what effect can this sunset possibly have on Passover and the statute for the eating of unleavened bread? Well, an answer: sunset will determine if Passover is being observed according to Yahuwah's will or if one is clinging to tradition. It's like an axe. It splits the wood into two pieces. There is a direct division. A question. More questions. What happens to the 8-cycle unleavened bread count? Oh, let me read that again. What happens to the 8-cycle unleavened bread count as seen in Exodus 12:18 when utilizing sunset to determine the change in the cycles of the week? Will sunset reckoning support the scriptures, or will it destroy the possibility of fulfilling Yahuwah's statutes? Remember the previous slide? Move these. Remember the previous graphics were formatted with dawn twilight commencing the cycle. The next graphic has sunset changing the cycle of the week, which in turn declares the night season arrives before the light season. So now it must be stated quite emphatically that this simply cannot be supported from the scriptures, and quite specifically, not from Genesis 1, but we need to look at it. It's now time to examine some comparisons for the Exodus 12 pattern to find the truth. We will consider a variety of sunset options. Option number 1. Note, this is Sunset Theory's imposter Passover. Whatever happens to the lamb, it always has a connection to the unleavened bread. Got to keep that in mind. Here we go. Sunset Theory. Sunset changes the cycle from Abib 13 to Abib 14. That happens at sunset. After the sunset, of course, comes the Erev twilight mixture. The darkness overtakes the light. That in fact happens. And the Passover meal is eaten with unleavened bread that night on the 14th. Then we come to the morning and Rav twilight mixture. The sunset or the sunrise is not in there because they don't really recognize it. That's why it's missing. But along comes the morning Rav twilight mixture, and there is a sunrise. They don't recognize. I made a mistake earlier. I should have said dawn. They don't recognize the dawn, sorry, but they do have sunrise. The dawn is not documented. So it is sunrise of Abib 14 light season. Now I want you to note, Yahusha died here at the 9th hour on Abib 14. How is it that the lamb was slain over here? The Passover meal eaten with unleavened bread on that night, Abib 14? How about, and why? Why was Yahusha alive? Isn't he the Passover lamb that is to fulfill the type of being of the Passover lamb on Abib 14? How is it that the lamb was slain here? Because you have to eat the Passover lamb with the unleavened bread for a Passover meal to be authentic. How is it that there was a Passover lamb slain over here? And yet, in reality, Yahusha died over here. How does that work? Sunset Theory. At the Last Supper, the disciples received new Passover rites in this night season before Yahusha was captured. They went to the Garden of Gethsemane in this night. It was not Passover. Why is it we are taught differently? Have we just accepted this? Next, sunset sacrifice of Abib 14 night season. This slide is specifically intended to assist the next slide. The partaking of the Passover lamb must include the unleavened bread at the meal. So over here on the left-hand side, let's have a look. When their lamb was slain to facilitate the authentic Passover lamb flesh to be eaten with unleavened bread at their Abib 14 night season Passover meal, was it or was it not a sacrifice? Absolutely. Indeed, any lamb slain for the Passover meal was a sacrifice. So why is this being questioned? Sunset theory A, sacrifice before the sacrifice? Well, I think I talked about that on the last slide too. Deuteronomy 16:4 declares the lamb slaughtered in the Erev twilight must not be left until the morning twilight. So when the Passover lamb is slain over here on Abib 14, just after the twilight, Abib 14, slain there, and it is required by statute to be burned and placed out of sight before dawn. That's statute. Now, let's have a look over here. Abib 14. Remember, Yahushua was alive. Remember, at dawn, he was standing on the pavement with Pilate at Golgotha. Yahushua said when he was hanging on the tree, he said, "It has been accomplished." What did that reference? That reference, he came and he fulfilled the Torah. He did not come to destroy, but he come to fulfill. So how is it that we're taught that the lamb was slain here on the night of Abib 14, and that Yahushua was still alive here at dawn with Pilate at Golgotha, and he didn't die until the afternoon in the 9th hour over here? How come we're taught that this sunset theory system is scriptural when it makes no sense whatsoever? It cannot be supported by scripture in any way, shape, or form. And yet, this is what we're taught. Why? I was there. I believed this for a while until I started asking questions. That's how come I ask questions, because I want you to question. Can Yahushua successfully fill this type 1,400 years later, the slaying and roasting of the Passover lamb? This is approximately 21 hours before he died on the tree over here with this arrow. 21 hours. And it was on the afternoon of Abib 14 that he died over here. And the statute says the Passover lamb remains must be put out of sight by dawn. Is there a red flag here? I sure hope so. The type was not fulfilled on the lunar calendar. It can't be. Yahushua died over here. He was not put out, he was not put in the tomb before dawn by statute. There's a serious, serious problem with sunset theory. If the Passover lamb was already slain here, according to statute, why do the scriptures indicate that Yahushua was the Passover lamb slain? Something is counterfeit. Are we paying attention? The sunset to sunset scenario shows the Passover lamb being slain correctly during the Abib 14 twilight, according to Deuteronomy 16:4. Yet it seems strange that the lamb was slain 21 hours before Yahushua actually died on the tree. I come not to destroy, but to fulfill were his words. Was that a lie? No. Yahushua was sinless. So what is the lie? What is the deception? Could it be the sunset theory system? We have traditionally been taught that the Passover lamb must be slain in the 9th hour, or 3 p.m. on our present clock. Hundreds of thousands of Israelites slain the family lamb at the temple as per statute requirement within a 3-hour window before sunset, as per the mainstream teaching. Is this true? Is this what actually happened? We have to question these things. think about these things when you read the words. The word congestion comes to mind here. How many lambs were slain in a 3-hour window? How many lambs can be slain? So we're going to look at a historical account from Josephus here and read it for what it is and question it for what it is. He says, or he writes, I should say, so these high priests, upon the coming of their feast, which is called the Passover, when they slay their sacrifices from the 9th hour to the 11th, that's 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Roman time, but so that a company not less than 10 belong to every sacrifice, and many of us are 20 in a company, found this number of sacrifices was 256,500, which, upon the allowance of no more than 10, that feast together amounts to 2,700,200 persons that were pure and holy. That's what Josephus says. That's a lot of lambs to be slain in a few hours. 3 p.m. to 5. A lot of lamb. Is that possible? What about the lamb according to sunset theory? Let's have a look at this. Next, sunset theory's imposter lamb flesh. Sunset changes the cycle from Abib 13 to Abib 14. At least that's what we're taught. Or at least that's what we have been taught, and we're questioning right now. So along comes the Erev twilight mixture after the sunset, and the Passover meal is eaten with unleavened bread that night. Well, the Passover meal portion is correct that night. The morning Erev twilight mixture arrives. Somehow the dawn is not noted, but along comes the sunrise, and the Abib 14 light season ensues, and the sunset follows up, and a new cycle starts. Notice the question marks. Can the antitype lamb be slain 18 hours after the Passover meal? If the correct Passover lamb was not slain until 18 hours after the Passover meal, what lamb was it that was slain for the Passover meal? Was it an authentic Passover lamb? And when that blood from that Passover lamb for the Abib 14 night season meal was slain, and that blood was put on the door, was that authentic blood put on the doorposts? And if it was not authentic, could it save people? The Passover lamb to be slain at 3 p.m., yet the Passover meal was eaten approximately 18 hours later. 18 hours later. Is there a problem here? Is there something that is not aligning with Scripture? How come we just accepted this in the past? I'm guilty. Where did that lamb's flesh come from? Was it an imposter lamb? Sunset theory. We need to pay attention to this. We've been silent too long. Sunset theory and the already dead sacrifice. Sunset changes the cycle from Abib 13 to Abib 14. Go to look at this again. The evening Erev twilight mixture happens. The Passover meal eaten with unleavened bread that night. And Abib 14 late season ensues. Again, the sunset. A new cycle starts. Is that correct? So the question we ask you, was the antitype lamb already dead when put on the tree, having been slain approximately 21 hours earlier, according to tradition? Pretty serious question. Was the antitype lamb already dead when put on the tree? No, of course not. We understand clearly that Yahusha was standing on the pavement at dawn with Pilate waiting to be sentenced. We need to question our traditions. Yahusha died over here at the 9th hour on Abib 14 light season. He did not die over here. He fulfilled the Torah and the statutes impeccably. So how is it that we're being taught this evil deception? Option number 2, sunset theory and the Abib 15 Passover meal. Do we read that in scripture where we are to eat the Passover meal on Abib 15? I thought it had 2 different dates, 2 different feasts, and 2 different dates. Well, this is what we have been taught, so let's have a look at it. Let's question it. Again, the Abib 14 night season here, Abib 14 light season. So the antitype lamb was slain at the 9th hour from dawn. That would be 3 p.m. Well, technically that portion is correct right here. The death of the Passover lamb at the 9th hour. How about this though? Sunset starts a new cycle. Well, let's put that in question. And the Passover meal is eaten on Abib 15 convocation night of unleavened bread. Is there any scripture that tells us that we're allowed or we're permitted or even acceptable in any way, an exception maybe, that we can eat the Passover meal on Abib 15? Anywhere. By statute, the Passover lamb remains were to be burnt before morning of Abib 14. How do you go back in time and burn the remains of the Passover lamb before the next morning? How does that work? Because the Passover lamb remains had to be burnt and out of place or out of sight by dawn. Yet, we're told we can eat the Passover meal on the Abib 15 convocation by means of the sunset changing the day, according to tradition. A Passover meal placed on Abib 15 is totally ridiculous. Yet, that's what we've been taught. With the varied sunset theory options we have just examined, how can Yahuwah's statutes declare 2 separate dates of Abib 14 and 15 for the Passover meal celebration? What has happened to Yahuwah's separation? Has man, through tradition, tried to combine Yahuwah's 2 festivals? Yahuwah never intended the Passover meal to be observed on Abib 15. Exodus 12:6. We're going to look at this again. And it shall be kept by you till the 14th of this month. Verse 8. And they shall eat the flesh in this night, roast with fire, and they shall eat unleavened with bitter. The 14th. Now, next, how about a look at the carnage to Yahuwah's statutes that is caused by observing the Passover day meal on Abib 15, according to sunset theory? This is the examination of both festivals to see if sunset theory can accomplish fulfilling 8 cycles of eating unleavened bread, as it is written in Exodus 12:18. That verse now becomes super important. Let's have a look here on the left. I want you to note this is cycle 0. Why cycle 0? Because there's no unleavened bread eaten on this cycle on the 14th, the Passover day. Why? Because the sunset changes Abib 14 to the 15th. Therefore, no Passover meal on the 14th, no unleavened bread eaten on the 14th. Passover is eaten on Abib 15 night. Again, no scripture. So this is the first cycle of eating unleavened bread. Let's count it out. Here's your days of eating unleavened bread. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You get to the end of unleavened bread. In the evening, you have 7 cycles of eating unleavened bread. There's the evening. Exodus 12:18. until the 21st day of the month. In the evening, you count your days of eating unleavened bread. You have 7 of them. What does that do for Exodus 12:18, where it demands 8 cycles of eating unleavened bread? And what if you take this word, until the 21st day of the month? When the sunset happens, that's your point of until. So technically, on the 21st day, you don't even need to eat unleavened bread. What does that do if you get technical? Well, that chops off the 7 and brings you down to only 6 days of eating unleavened bread. It depends if you want to get technical or not. But still, at this point, you only have 7 days of eating unleavened bread. What does this do for Exodus 12:18? The command from Yahuwah to eat unleavened bread from the 14th to the 21st? It annihilates it. It ignores it. It destroys it. It eliminates it. What have you done to Yahuwah's command if you observe eating unleavened bread consumption by sunset theory? You have stepped outside of Torah. Is that serious? Read Revelation 22, verse 12, I think. Blessed are they doing his commands, that they may have the right to enter through the gates into the city. If you observe unleavened bread according to sunset theory, are you doing his command found in Exodus 12:18? No, it's not possible. Do you have a right to enter through the gates into the city? Not if you're breaking the command. Does it get serious? I don't need to go farther with that. On Abib 14, there is no unleavened bread eaten. There is 7 cycles only, at best, of eating unleavened bread. And that is not Yahuwah's required cycles of eating unleavened bread for the full Passover festival. The abominable sunset system only allows 7 cycles for eating unleavened bread. This is another sunset failure, another destruction to the statutes, if we allow it. This malicious problem imposed upon us must be identified. Again, cycle number 0, Abib 14. What causes the problem? Sunset changes Abib 14 to the 15th. By default of Abib 14 sunset, changing the Passover meal to Abib 15 convocation night, there is 0 unleavened bread eaten on Abib 14. What does that do for Exodus 12:18? It places you outside of Torah if you accept the sunset. The abominable sunset problem exposes itself right here with the sunset attempting to change the 24-hour cycle according to sunset theory. Exodus 12, 6 to 10, and Deuteronomy 16, 1 to 8 are destroyed right here. There's a serious disconnect here somewhere. In 2 locations, the scriptures declare the Passover is the 14th cycle, and Unleavened Bread Festival begins on the 15th of the month. The book of Numbers also supports the same separation. Again, let's read it from Numbers. Numbers 28:16. And in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, is the Passover to Yahuwah. Verse 17. And on the 15th day of this month is a feast. 7 days ye shall eat unleavened bread. 2 dates, 2 feasts, a separation between either one. The Passover cannot be observed on the 15th of the month, not ever. Sunset theory has failed again. It is obvious that dawn day is the only option that will come into perfect scriptural alignment. Did the Israelites, did they eat the Passover lamb's flesh with unleavened bread on Abib 14? When examining the next slide, one must be acutely aware of the acclaimed change of cycle that occurs at the sunset. What effect does the sunset have on the cycles of the week according to man? Are we within our allowances to remove cycles of the week without scriptural support? Does Yahuwah turn his face and accept such readjustments of his statutes? Can anyone justify the facts relating to the omitted scriptures on the next slide? If not, what would be the next step? Sunset theory summary thus far. Exodus 12, verses 6 to 8. That's dismissed. No lamb remains to burn on the 14th. Exodus 12, 12 to 14. Destroyed. Imposter blood for the door. How many people would be saved with imposter blood on their door sill? Exodus 12, 16. Simply dismissed. Exodus 12, 18. Destroyed. Impossible to fulfill. Statutes stepped on. Exodus 12:24, destroyed. Exodus 12:42, critically confused. In the Passover feast alone, by a very quick glimpse of the Torah, these texts have been rejected and trampled upon by human feet, all because of sunset theory. Now, your homework, Exodus 12, 24 and 42, have not been addressed here. Therefore, you may consider looking at these verses on your own. Check them out. What do you think? Use your questions. Let's recapture the Passover and unleavened bread festivals in a dawn starts the day type of graphic. This is a reminder of the solution that achieves complete fulfillment of all the commands and the statutes for the Passover festival, and unleavened bread festival. And this is basically a repeat from slide 29. The two festivals of Passover and unleavened bread through the dawn format, or Genesis 1. These do accomplish fulfilling 8 cycles of eating unleavened bread, as it is written in Exodus 12:18. Passover will be eaten on Abib 14 night season. So we look on the left, cycle number 1, Abib 14. Passover eaten on that night, roasted in fire with unleavened bread. Accomplishment, alignment, and fulfillment. Then we add the days of the feast of unleavened bread. There's 7 days. Each day is commanded to eat unleavened bread. Count them out. 1 plus 7 is 8. 8 days fulfilled for eating unleavened bread. Exodus 12:8. What does that do? It fulfills it completely. Scriptural alignment. Exodus 12:18. Until the 21st day of the month in the evening. Complete. It's there. Dawn to dawn. That's how it's fulfilled. The scripture revealed an 8-cycle schedule for consuming unleavened bread during both the Passover and unleavened bread festivals. Under close scrutiny, sunset theory cannot align with Yahuwah's dawn start as implemented at creation. Sunset theory plays havoc with the statutes. So we're going to look at a scriptural conflict resolution here. There's 3 scriptures counted only 7 days to consume unleavened bread. Count in Exodus 12:15 to 16. Count Exodus 13, 6 to 7. 7 days there, 7 days there. Count Leviticus 23, 5 to 8. There's 7 days there. Exodus 12:18 included Passover for the full 8 days of eating unleavened bread. And that's only by dawn design. Well, there's 8 days of eating unleavened bread there. During the spring festivals, sunset theory reduced the statute count for eating unleavened bread by 1 full day. Only the dawn design brings resolution. Yahuwah's requirement for the days of eating unleavened bread is about learning to count the days beginning with only dawn twilight. What's that verse? Teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. If you don't have Psalms 90 verse 12 memorized, might be a good idea. It says nothing about looking to the moon. It says, teach us to number our days. Is there a secular historical quote that aligns with Torah? Well, here's some sort of a proof quote, I guess, if you will, a quote of significance. The most important in this festival was the Passover day, the 14th of Nisan. In it, they ate unleavened bread, probably like the Jews, 8 days through. Interesting. There is no trace of a yearly festival of the resurrection among them. The Christians of Asia Minor appealed in favor of their Passover solemnity on the 14th of Nisan to John. This is taken out of some historic information about church history. It's translated by Samuel Davidson. But note there, 8 days through. They counted Passover on the 14th and unleavened bread starting on the 15th. Just something of interest documented in history. Back to the questions. There was only one single factor that made the difference in this comparison study to find the truth. What was it? It was choosing dawn to start Yahuwah's cycles of the week. Where did the concept of dawn starting Yahuwah's cycles come from? Well, that very basic format of creation exposed in Genesis 1 is the concept, the foundation, if you will, that makes the sunset theory a kaleidoscope of confusion transform into a beautiful picture of salvation when dawn is applied to the scripture. This format is known as dawn design for the covenant calendar. By accepting the word as it is written, the confusion is banned from Yahuwah's word. When choosing to worship Yahuwah, it may be according, or may it be according to his words. Consider this picture for the dawning of the day as a Torah option to accomplish the needed paradigm shift, to drop erroneous traditions and start a new chapter. To worship Yahuwah according to his plan is his desire for each and every one who is willing. Choose ye this day, Joshua 24:15. So earlier we had a question for you. Where do the scriptures provide the distinction between the orders to consume unleavened bread during the festival of unleavened bread and the festival of Passover? We discovered this distinction is given through the Genesis 1 reckoning of the commencement of each cycle at dawn. There is a difference between dawn and sunrise to be noted. Are we able to find that in the scripture? Next, an investigation on the difference between dawn and sunrise, as given in two more scripture examples. So we're going to be looking at two places in scripture, and then we're going to be wrapping this up. Genesis 19, verses 15 to 23. And when morning, that is Shachar, dawned, the messengers urged Lot to hurry, saying, get up, take your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. Shachar, when morning dawned. Lot pleads for time, Genesis 19, verse 20. He's pleading here. Look, please, the city is near enough to flee to, and it is small. Please let me escape there. Is it not a small matter? And let my life be saved? He's pleading for his life. He wants to escape to Stor. It's the name of the small town, about 3 miles or 5 kilometers away. He's doing this at Shachar, at the very first light. What happens? Genesis 19:23. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Stor. As I said, it was 3 miles away or 5 kilometers. That's the journey it took Lot to escape. In that time was the twilight mixture. In that time when he was able to flee three miles or 5 kilometers. That's your twilight mixture. That's a scriptural example of the twilight mixture. The next witness from scripture, Genesis 32, verse 24. And Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. The breaking of the day, Oluth Shachar, Genesis 32, verse 26. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. Who is he? Notice the capital. Who is he? And notice what he said. Let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I am not letting you go until you have barachni, or blessed me. Who said? Who is that he? That would be Elohim. Well, how do we know that? Well, we're going to read a little bit farther. But Elohim said with his own mouth, he declared this, and it is written in scripture. At the shachar, at the dawn, he said, the day breaks. Are we paying attention? Or have we let this slide through our ears? What about this twilight mixture? Let's have a look. And Yaakov called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life is preserved. And the sun rose on him as he passed over Penuel, and he limped on his hip. Genesis 32, 30, and 31 for the verses. So in that twilight mixture time, when Yaakov was having a conversation, if you will, a strong conversation with Elohim, they were doing wrestling, they were jostling together, they had a strong conversation. Yaakov demanded a blessing, and he got it. And Elohim left the scene. In that time is the twilight mixture. There's a space of time there. And scripture delineates this very, very clearly. Because after this meeting with Elohim, when he said the day breaks, Yaakov was going across the river. He was limping across. And he noted this carefully. He has seen Yahum or Yahuwah, or he has seen Elohim face to face. So when we hear the words from Elohim saying that the day breaks, maybe we should be paying attention. Yahuwah has just told us with his own instruction in Genesis 19, verse 15 and 23, and Genesis 32, verse 26, exactly when his 24-hour cycle starts and ends. If you know this, you can easily calculate the number of days allotted for eating unleavened bread during the full Passover festival. There's no conflict, not when you understand the words of the scripture, but when you start injecting tradition, massive confusion ensues. So I ask for Yahuwah's blessing on you today on this Shabbat. This is the end of the study. And if you have any questions and comments on the Melchizedek schedule for eating unleavened bread, please send your questions to questions@studythecalendar.com. Thank you for your time. Yahuwah bless you in all that you do. Shabbat Shalom.